You dance with the elements over there, man, and they have that saying, inshallah, in God's hands. And it's true. I mean, you don't know what's gonna happen. You can have a beautiful blue sky at 8 in the morning, you get off your first shot, and all of a sudden you look across the desert, and here comes a sandstorm. The sandstorms break and start. We would have beautiful, beautiful morning like this. And at lunch today, you know, at 1 o'clock today.
Unbelievable.
On the first scout in Morocco, we were there in July. We went to a town called Erfoud, which is on the northern edge of the Sahara Desert, and got out of the car to check out a location and looked at the thermometer on the car. It was 149 degrees. That's not an exaggeration. Truly 149 degrees, which is not, I didn't know it could get that hot on the Earth.
We had massive, massive flooding in which all the bridges getting to our locations were knocked out.
For 3 or 4 days, there was a plague of locusts just coming at us like dive bombers.
We're hoping some of those days are budgeted for. I'm sure they are, if somebody who's ever smart doing the budget.
You can really only shoot successfully in Morocco in the winter into very early spring. So we shot late January into the early spring. And the weather was great. It was like being in LA in the winter, except of the rain and the sandstorms and the locust.
I chased down the role a little over 7 years ago. Got turned on to the books and the character, and found out that the rights were still out there and that nobody had really gotten Clive Cussler, the author's approval, as Dirk Pitt. So I went to him. Finally, he approved after having funny conversations like, I think you'd be a great Dirk Pitt, but your hair's sandy blonde and Dirk's brunette. I was like, we can do something about that. And then he said, I think you'd be a great Dirk Pitt, but your eyes are blue and Dirk's are green. I said, I suppose we can do something about that too.
Matthew did dye his hair and put in green contacts to make sure he did match the physical description.
He really lived and breathed Dirk Pitt. He wanted it. I mean, you know, for 7 years, he was lobbying for that part. And when he finally got it, he made the most of the opportunity and he just dedicated himself.
He was pursuing Dirk Pitt before I came on. Yeah. And he was pursuing Dirk Pitt after I was gone.
Even before I'd read some of the books, I'd always said I was looking for a character that could wrestle with the crocodiles in the morning and dance with the queen at the ball that night. That kind of Renaissance man. That's my general explanation of a Renaissance man. And then when I read this, I was like, well, that's Dirk Pitt.
And you found a coin?
Not just a coin. I found the coin. I love that scene in the back of the boat where I as Dirk Pitt, get to tell Eva Rojas my secret. You really get to see what's ticking inside of him and why. Half in what he says, half in by the look in his eye. Now, what kind of man tries to take a ship like that across the ocean? Why? How? I don't know. But I plan on finding out. Al loves it when people ask me that, thinks it makes me look a bit. It also is something that gets sort of that romance started because he is sharing a secret. That's why it's romantic. It's not, he doesn't make a move, you know, on the girl. What he does is he shares something.
Matthew was attached to the project when I came on board. And he's also a producer, so there's another layer to the typical star and producer relationship.
There were times during production where I was like, why did I want to become an executive producer on this? That was stupid. And at the end of a 15-hour day, you know, I'm needing my sleep, being up at 1 in the morning working on the scene we're going to do the next day that didn't maybe have to do with me. I was going, why did I do this?
So I've been talking to his back for the last 30 minutes?
You've been doing the same thing that you've been doing here.
But because it was something that I enjoyed so much, the story, and having an opinion on the tone of where it was going and communicating with the director, that was a joy.
I was completely taken aback by how seriously he approached this in terms of his diet and exercise.
It takes some work, man.
Boom.
I'm 8.5, 9 pounds lighter than Dirk Pitt right now because we got a different role coming out. But Dirk was in great shape. I said, man, this is one of those guys, one of those opportunities where you go, guys in the best mental shape, spiritual shape, and physical shape. There is, across the board.
He's built like a ballet school. He works out all the time, he and Steve. They're both incredibly buff.
They adore each other. They hang around, lie about women, and do all those great things that guys are supposed to do.
Whoa! Dirk really couldn't survive without Al. That's just plain and simple. I mean, he looks good. He's this fast guy. He's a smooth dude. He's quick. He's always wet. He's always wet, which is interesting because Al's not always wet.
Backward action! Clive Cussler wrote Al Giordino based on his best friend from the war. I think in the book he's 5'1" or 5'2", built like a tank with dark curly hair. So when you start with that and you think, okay, let's get an actor for that. There is nobody. There is no actor that exactly out there working that fits that role.
What's happening?
And then in just looking at everybody, I came across Steve Zahn.
I'd called Richard Linklater, who worked with him in Suburbia, and talked to him about him, and Rick was like, yeah, you know what, actually, very interesting. I think you two would get on well.
Steve Zahn has a just crazy out there sense of humor, and he just improvises like crazy, and he can, he's off the wall, but he's created at the same time a very real character to put all of that kind of Tasmanian devil energy into.
He was a guy that I always saw in films, whether it was that or Out of Sight, and I'd see him and I go, man, I want to see more of that guy. I always like him in these smaller roles that he is, and I like his timing and the characters he plays, and he makes me laugh, basically.
And most importantly to me, Steve embodied the spirit of Al. So I brought Steve out to Phoenix to meet with Clive, because Clive has approval of Dirk and Al. At the end of the meeting, Clive said, all right, I like this Steve Zahn, he should play Al, and Clive gave his blessing.
Not the Marlin story again, Al.
733 pounds, 5.5 hours in the fighting chair.
I thought it was 600 pounds.
Hey, when did you catch that day? I can't remember anything at all.
How long you guys been together?
Since kindergarten, college, Navy, Numa. Poor guy's always been in my shadow. Always the Al's maid, never the Al.
What works on screen the most is just little things that were in between the lines. And that's sort of where we formed a relationship as Dirk and Al, and also became, you know, pretty good friends as Matthew and Steve.
Yes, that's great.
Okay, guys.
It does bring you closer to somebody when you sweat your ass off for 12 hours a day in the heat. You really get to know another person on a total different level. There's really no pretense when you're huffing and puffing. I don't think Breck ever picked that thing up and tried to drag it anywhere, you know what I mean? But Matthew and I just did it, you know, because we were kind of too proud to, like, go, this is hard. But I will say right now and here that that was a pain in the butt, and that was my least favorite. I celebrated that night of the last truck liner until the reshoots in Palm Springs.
Al! Did you bring any of the explosives from Massarde? Couldn't find them. Al! I didn't have time. Al! Of course I brought the explosives! Ava, I hope you don't throw like a girl.
Sometimes in those kind of movies, the female character is not on the same level. You know, at least for me as an actress, the things that I've read before that way, the male characters were far more interesting than the female characters. And in this one, I think Eva is a really, really good character that has so many layers and colors and that is needed in the story.
She was a no-brainer for me in the movie. I mean, you know, a Spanish doctor who comes, you know, who works for the WHO. I mean, who else would I get? You know, she was perfect for the role, and luckily for us, she wanted to do the role.
I'm not annoyed at you. I'm annoyed at her getting... It's like free speech.
We thought, one, we knew we wanted someone that brought an international flavor to the whole team. Two, we wanted someone who we believe had the kind of heart and the ambition to be someone who'd be chasing down this disease. And what I always understood was, yeah, and how do Dirk and her without saying it, how do they come together? Well, I'm chasing down the unknown, chasing down the unknown treasure. Well, so is she.
Marine salvage. I believe that's the term you're looking for, Doctor.
I was worried and insecure about it because I felt I'm young to be this kind of doctor. I actually talked to some doctors like that from the WHO. And the doctor of the WHO told me that I actually had the perfect age for that kind of character because the people that they know that are more open to travel and going into dangerous places are the youngest.
For me, the big one was Eva Rojas, and making her an active participant in the adventure to make her story just as important as Dirk's story.
She's an actress who's not afraid to take chances. And on this movie, the chances for her were more on the physical nature.
Really? Okay, let's try again. What's that?
No, they are weird.
Are they weird?
There's a scene in the movie where the characters are racing camels next to a moving train and kind of take off on the old idea of a cowboy movie, racing a train with horses and jumping the train.
Pretty good stuff, huh?
Someone once said a camel is a horse designed by a committee. But at breakneck speed, they gallop these camels at 40 miles an hour and then grab hold of a speeding locomotive and haul themselves off of the camel onto the locomotive.
The jumping was all stunters. There's somewhere we have to draw the line. Jumping from a camel to a moving train is a stuntman's or woman's job, that's for sure. But racing next to it and making the move to do the jump was all them.
The whole first part of the movie, for a couple of months or 2 months and a half, I was obsessed with the fact that I still have to shoot that scene. I had terrible fears about it.
She's saying, no, Breck, I can't do it. I don't think I can do it. There's no way.
Just slightly, though.
I don't like saying no to a director about something like that. So I was forcing myself and training and trying to lose the fear. And at the end, we did it, and I had a lot of fun doing it. But I was starting to get obsessed about it.
She got up there and she galloped and raced that camel better than Matthew and Steve. Had no fear. The whole idea for this movie was let's do it more in the old style, I mean, Indiana Jones style. Let's do it where, rather than using computer effects to fake everything, we decided to do as many of the stunts, as much of the action for real with the actors, as much as it was safe.
I cannot say enough wonderful things about Breck Eisner. It was a massive undertaking. It was his first really big project. He had a very specific idea of what he wanted the film to be. It was a big risk, but he certainly came through with flying colors.
He's tireless. That's one of his traits that he has, that he's gonna make sure that he's covered every angle. And if we weren't sure, that if it wasn't really working, he was smart enough to give himself certain options.
Matthew, when he did the fights, it was incredibly exhausting. The whole end of the movie, everybody's yelling and screaming and firing guns and fighting and running and jumping. It was a very physically challenging movie for the actors. And these are in locations where you're in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a desert, where it's a pretty harsh environment.
And I will remember those days forever. We were living in the middle of nowhere in the desert, living in our trailers. It's one of those things from this job that I love so much, that you get to do all this crazy stuff and go to places that you probably wouldn't go.
It was really thrilling, realizing you were in something really unique and huge that represented what kind of the child in you thought movies were really like.
Part of the fun of doing a film like this is it makes you feel like a kid again, so part of the fun of making it is you get to sort of be a kid. But you're playing with the biggest and the coolest and the baddest toys in the business, and you're getting paid for it.